The SsangYong Tivoli. Nope, this was not named after a brand of ice cream. Rather, it's named after a town in Italy, and when read backwards, says, I love it. So let's see if this has what it takes to be worthy of its nameplate. The subcompact crossover segment is an immensely competitive one. There are so many choices out there, and while there are some compelling options, there really isn't much that sets each contender apart. You see, most vehicles in this class share the same fundamentals: space for 5, higher ground clearance, and a gasoline engine. And while the Tivoli does have a variant with a gasoline engine, this one comes with a diesel mill. And we'll get into that a little later during the drive. But for now, let's discuss styling, which is another area that sets the Tivoli apart. Because the design is just so idiosyncratic. There's just nothing else that looks quite like this. It sports a really squarish look, as if the person who penned this has a fetish for using a ruler. There are straight lines and corners everywhere. In fact, the only place you won't see straight lines is the wheel arches and those bulged rear fenders. But despite its small size, the Tivoli doesn't look wimpy. In fact, you still get some pretty decent kit, such as LED DRLs, fog lamps, power folding side mirrors with repeaters, 18-inch wheels, and LED taillights. Now, if the front of the car is simplistic, then the rear end is a different story. It seems the designer got a bit more adventurous here. When you open the rear hatch, you get 393 liters of trunk space, which really isn't bad for its size. In any case, the rear seats can fold in case you need more space. Now let's see how much space the passengers get. The Tivoli's interior may not be the fanciest one out there, but it definitely is well equipped. For starters, you get this fully digital instrument cluster, and aside from giving you heaps of information and configurability, it's still clear and easy to read. Even when you have it set to display information like the song you're listening to, vital information such as your speedo and tach remain most prominent. The multimedia system comes in the form of this 8-inch touchscreen that comes standard with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You don't get a 360 camera, but at least you get a reverse camera. Also worth noting is the fact that you don't get parking sensors. Though it's nice to see physical knobs and buttons, which makes operating it a tad bit easier for someone who's old school like me. There are also buttons on the steering wheel for your audio controls, but I find it odd to move the switch down in order to skip to the next track. It's quite counterintuitive. The AC controls are adjusted manually, which I really don't mind, and you also get a mechanical park brake. So this interior may not have the latest tech features, and it's not exactly what you'd call luxurious, with all these hard plastics on the dash and on the door cards. And despite the fully digital instrument cluster, it still doesn't feel modern due to its boxy design. The center stack also looks humongous and even protrudes from the top of the dash. But despite all that, I still find it an extremely pleasant place to sit, probably because it exudes a bit of character and it's a welcome departure from all the other interiors that seem to be using the same template. There are also clever touches such as card holders behind the door of the glove box, and a cutout in the center storage to hold bigger items in place. You also get an auto-dimming mirror, which is a nice touch and something you hardly see in this class. This is the kind of interior that fits just like a glove, and I say that because the ergonomics are pretty good. Everything is well within reach, and you can figure out how to operate all the functions without having to read the manual. The seats are also really comfortable, and the steering wheel is good to the touch. Rear seat occupants are also treated to decent levels of space and comfort. And if anyone has to sit in the middle, they won't have to deal with an intrusive center tunnel. You also get an armrest with cup holders. And you may not be able to fit bigger drink bottles there, but I'm sure you'll manage to find space for it somehow. I guess the time has come to talk about what really sets the Tivoli apart. So that means it's time to go out for a drive. So under the hood of the SsangYong Tivoli Premium lies a 1.6 liter turbocharged diesel engine, which pumps out 136 horsepower and 324 Newton meters of torque. And that, my friends, makes this the class leader in the torque department. And between horsepower and torque, I choose torque hands down, especially for a daily driver, which is what this is meant to be. Because a lot of torque makes the car feel lighter and more responsive, which ultimately translates to effortless driving. Sorry, I have traction control working overtime there. Now there is a bit of turbo lag, but once you get past that, you feel the sudden surge that will certainly put a smile on your face. Now this comes with a 6-speed automatic transmission, which shifts smoothly and promptly because it always downshifts when you need it to. It even has a kickdown pedal, which means there's a switch or a button behind the pedal. And if you need it to downshift, just floor it and it will deliver the goods. But that isn't even the Tivoli's best driving trait, because that title has to go to its handling, with the steering feel coming in at a very close second. Because this car just feels so planted, and there's loads of grip without any unnerving body roll. And if that torque isn't enough to put a smile on your face, then going around a corner in this thing certainly will. Then there's the steering, which is tuned so nicely. You always know where the wheels are pointing, and it responds so well to your inputs. Now, if a torquey engine, good handling, and precise steering aren't the right ingredients for a pleasurable drive, then I don't know what is. Now, the suspension is a little bit on the stiff side, but it is by no means jarring or uncomfortable. And if a little stiffness is all I have to pay for this kind of handling, then I'll take it any day of the week. NVH is also pretty good, although you do hear the rattle of the diesel engine, but it's not enough to be annoying. If you love to drive and you want something that goes beyond taking you from point A to point B, then this definitely has to be on your short list. The SsangYong Tivoli Diesel Premium can be yours for 1,290,000 pesos. And I know there are more affordable options out there, but if you hold a high regard for driving dynamics, then you owe it to yourself to take this out on a test drive, because you might just walk away from that test drive saying, I love it.